Yesterday is still here. Yesterday is still here below the surface. Here and there it pierces the white snow, showing us reminders of what was and still is, whether beautiful or not. But today, we are what we were yesterday, and something more. A beauty and a wonder beckon us with all the promise of new fallen snow. And from a deep place within us comes a response. And a new start toward the fulfillment that was always waiting, urging, prompting in the heart, beckoning us also from beyond. Glory, glory to the promise of the day, its graveness not forbidding, but gentle and peace-giving. Glory to the human heart and the new hope, the possibilities, the feeling that the world can be remade, rebuilt with a vision of beauty, and with the creativeness of universal love. These words by Robert Weston, reminding us that yesterday is still here, but there is the promise of tomorrow as well. I am here in the Linus Pauling room out at our UUFCO building, and glad to be here with you today. The staff and the church kind of shut down for that week in between Christmas and New Year's, and so this service is always a little calmer, a little less chaotic because the staff has been resting. And I always appreciate that. I think it's a good way to enter into a new year. Happy New Year's, everybody. It is good to be with you here in this time and space. During our Christmas Eve service, I commented that in the last 9 months, my understanding of time and space and presentness and what it means to be here have all shifted dramatically. And so when I say it is good to be here with you, even though I'm alone at the building, I really do feel connected and here with you in this time, if not in this space, in this moment that we are sharing together. And it's not a bad moment, and it's not a bad morning. Also, because of Christmas Eve service, I forgot my camera and had to drive back home to get it after coming out to the church building, to the fellowship building. And it's always nice to drive east toward Bend in the morning when the sun is coming up. And the sun and the clouds were miraculous this morning. It felt very much like a new day, very much like this new year. And so it's good to be here together in this time, in this place, whatever that means, but together, to begin a new year afresh, to be with one another, to remind each other of what we hold most dear in the world that we hope to help create together. It's good to be together. We welcome all of you, wherever you are. You are here. So let us worship together. Let us create a space that proclaims and helps us live into this new year in our deepest hopes.
Now please join me in singing our opening hymn for the new year, hymn 350, The Ceaseless Flow of Endless Time. And I'll do a full one-verse intro so you're familiar with the melody before we sing together. The ceaseless flow of endless time, no one can check or stay. We'll view the past with no regret, no future with dismay. the past, and dream-like melts away. The breaking of tomorrow's dawn begins anew today. The past and future ever meet in the eternal now, to make each day a thing complete shall be a new year vow.
Today's chalice lighting words come from our Soul Matters curriculum for children and youth. This month's theme is imagination, and I am so excited to imagine all of the things with all of you this month. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it as I light mine now. And if you don't have a chalice, you can do what we do in RE sometimes and rub your hands together so that you can feel that warmth. Studied by each other, pulled in many directions by the demands of our days, we light this chalice to remind us of the still point deep inside, made unsteady by the winds of unpredictable paths. We light this chalice to remember the shelter of each other, longing for lights that lead us back to our truest selves. We light this chalice to illuminate the faces of friends and sacred companions, recalling once again that we find our way through the willingness to take each other's hand.
Now again, would you please join me in song, singing our chalice lighting response 123, Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning and Happy New Year. I'm Chela Sloper, the Congregational Life Facilitator, and I have today's announcements. We want to make a special welcome to those who are visiting either for the first or maybe a few times in. And we have a virtual visitor form that we'll have in the Joys or in the chat area. And you can let us know that you're here. And if you'd like to sign up for our communications, that's the way that you do that as well. As Amy told us, January's theme is imagination. And so one of the things that we would like to imagine is some of you preparing chalice lighting videos. So if you're interested in doing that, send me an email, chela@uufco.org, and we'll get you set up with some information and some resources so that you can participate in our Sunday services that way. This week on January 6th, which is our first Wednesday, we'll have our first contemplative service of the year. So Reverend Scott focuses that time, and it's just a still way, some reflection, some music. So that'll be at 7:30 this Wednesday on Zoom. Next Sunday, we'll have both Bring a Friend to Church Sunday, and we're going to have our first newcomer welcome session. We'll have it at 12:30, so this will allow a little bit of time after the service ends, and people who are interested in learning some basic information about what Unitarian Universalism is, and some things about our congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Central Oregon. So there'll be a sign up for that in this week's email, as well as if you're not hooked up with our emails yet, go ahead and send me an email still, shayla@uufco.org. The link will also be on the calendar. And so then looking a little bit forward, more forward into the month, beginning on Monday, January 18th, which is the Martin Luther King Jr. Day, that will be the launch gathering for the Winter Challenge to end racism, systemic racism, and white supremacy. And so our diversity, equity, and inclusion group invite you to that. There'll be more information in this week's email, in the all congregational email, and that'll also have the schedule so that you can plan out the next 6 weeks or so after that begins in January 18th. So the gathering on Monday, the 18th, will be at 6 p.m., of course, by Zoom. We now have 6 entries for the talent show on January 22nd. That's on Friday, and we want more. And if you think this is kind of an old-fashioned idea, who cares? The thing is, it is so fun to see people just sharing what they love doing. You can do a show and tell if you've had a knitting project, or if you want to learn a new song, or if you want to dust off an old instrument, or do a video of yourself doing a dance, whatever. But we want to see you. This is just a fun way to see one another in ways that we're not typically seeing about each other. So anyway, Friday the 22nd. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, on Sunday, January 24th, we'll have our mid-year membership meeting. And this is for people who already are officially members of UUFCO. They've signed our membership book. And this will be almost immediately after the service. We'll have about a 5-minute break. That's Sunday, January 24th. There will be some items to vote on, and we'll explain how that will go on that day. So mark your calendars. There's a lot going on already in this launch into the new year. And you know, in the months past, we often have highlighted when our offering was going to be devoted to an organization or charitable causes beyond our congregation. And I just want to underscore here today that at the end of the service, we'll have an opportunity for us all to contribute to the financial health of UUFCO. And that's what our offering is for. So look for the information on how to support this fellowship, a little bit of reciprocity in return for the blessing that you receive. And we hope that you are receiving blessings. And here's one: blessings on your day.
I'm Amy Brock, and I'm the Director of Religious Exploration for Children and Youth. And today I'm thinking about beginnings and endings. And I'm thinking about how beginnings and endings usually involve doors. So raise your hand if you've ever read the book or watched the movie about the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Nice. I see some hands. Thank you. So in that story, if you remember, Lucy looks for the perfect place to hide, and she opens up the door to a great big wardrobe. So she goes to the door all the way to the back, to the clothes, and suddenly she's in a whole other world, a magical world with lions and witches. Wouldn't it be cool if there were a magical world like that behind every door? When Lucy opened the door to the wardrobe, she didn't know that she was opening the door to Narnia. It didn't look like anything special. It was just a boring door full of clothes and coats. But through that door was magic. Most of the doors in our lives are like this. We don't know what we're crossing into when we open a door until we get there. It might be a regular door, or it could be a magical one. 2021 kind of feels like a new door to me. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm excited to find out, I think. I don't know if I'm ready to meet a lion, though. The 6 sources of our UU faith include Jewish and Christian teachings. The Hebrew word for peace is shalom, and the root or a part of that word means wholeness. It's this idea of peace that doesn't just mean like stillness or calmness or no stress. It kind of just means that we're able to find some sense of knowing, of grounding, of security, even when challenging things might be happening. In one of our RE classes this morning, we talked about setting goals. And we talked about how it's important when we're setting a goal to identify things that we can change and things that we really can't change. And sometimes it's really, really hard to tell the difference. However, generally things that we can change have steps that we can take to change them. And if we can't think of steps to make our goal happen, then it's not really a goal. It's more of a wish. And wishes are good too, but we can't really do much to change whether a wish happens or it doesn't. However, sometimes goals move us in the direction of our wishes. They kind of work together like that. And so, as we tentatively walk forward from the door of 2021, I invite you to take a moment to ground yourself, to feel the earth beneath your feet or your seat, to feel that sense of wholeness, that sense of safety, that sense of support. And after you've found that, think about what wishes you might have for our world and what goals you might make for yourself to help move us toward our shared wishes that we all have together in this Unitarian Universalist faith. And so ends our time together today. Let's all say the Children's Covenant. In this place, I'm kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I am a friend to the earth and all animals and people. In this place, I am loved.
Scott, I'm so sorry. You need to unmute.
I poked it, but it didn't receive my poke. This week, like every week, this year, like every year, this life, like every life, joys and sorrows are visited upon us. And as a community, we hold those for and with one another. We'll now open our chat box for you to share a joy or a sorrow from your life and from your week, as Peggy guides us with some beautiful music as well.
Perhaps the words from that beautiful hymn that we sang earlier, number 350, the words struck you somewhat the same it did me. The past and future ever meet in the eternal now. I think we can all agree that 2021 has more significance than any other year we have walked into. However, I think the way we will experience 2021, whatever happens, and we don't know, there's a lot of unknowns for 2021, but the way we experience with this year will largely depend upon how we approach each now moment, this now moment, the next now moment, the next now moment, because we have tremendous power within ourselves to create our life and our perspective. And I think for many of us, 2020 kind of hit us like a ton of bricks. And when I think about 2020, all I can say is good grief. Like, we were hit with one thing after another. And on that note, I thought I would play a little whimsical jazz piece that Vince Giraldi wrote for the Peanuts series, and the title of it is "Oh, Good Grief."
We all come to prayer with different meanings and ideas and attitudes, if we even come to prayer at all. We all believe different things about the universe and God, if we believe in God at all. But prayer offers us a chance to create a space, and how we fill that space is up to us. It's a space for opening, it's a space for receiving, it's a space for giving. And so in that spirit, I invite you into prayer, into reflection, and into meditation. Spirit of life and spirit of love. Existence of which we are a part, whose totality we will never know. We mark our lives and moments with time. And we've just crossed the cusp into a new year. We end and enter the year with mingled pain and excitement, with gratitude and concern. Our very lives are a blend of loss and pain, gain and joy, and a mixed expression of gratitude and anger and sadness and appreciation. May we welcome the new mornings of this new year. May we stay open. May we stay soft in birthing imagination into life. May we look for collective liberation, an emergent world that welcomes new learning and new possibilities. May we rest in these moments of in-between, that eternal now, seeking the doorways of inspiration and imagination, and cross those thresholds when we are ready and willing and courageous, and also while scared. May we do this work together and know we are never alone. May we do this in the name of all that is holy and all that we each find sacred in our own unique ways. Amen.
I'm standing in the hallway, looking at the doors, wondering which one I should open, what I'm waiting for. The future's here before me, the past is closed behind, and I don't know which way to turn or what I hope to find, so I'm just waiting. I'm standing at the window, staring at the sky, watching the horizon, wondering which way I should fly. How do the winter birds know where to go and when it's time? When I can't hear my own heartbeat for the noise inside my mind while I'm waiting. Every day's a brand new question, another river yet to cross. I'm hoping for the courage to stay just a little lost. had to go, when prayers seem unanswered and questions hover low. A story's found an ending, but the new one's not begun. The truth is in the silence before the song is sung, while we're waiting, waiting in between. We're waiting, waiting in between.
New Year's Eve felt just a little bit different this year, at least it did for me. Our neighborhood has an annual New Year's Eve parade around our circle. And this year, like most years, it was loud and it was rambunctious and full of kids and adults and elders, socially distanced this year with masks, but such are the times. And it felt like a little extra something in the celebration of the turning of this year on this particular evening. So I've never really been one to disparage years. Every year, there's people who just cannot wait for the year to get done. And many times, people who've rightly had a tough go at it and they just want the page to turn. But I'll tell you what, 2020, you did it to me. I was excited to see 2021 come around, to turn that page on the calendar and welcome some semblance of a fresh start, some way of putting a line in the sand and saying, that was that, this is now, and the future is over there. But this moment, that line is somewhat arbitrary on New Year's, this time when we decide to reboot the new year and perhaps ourselves. There's a sense that we feel we can just turn the page and forget a year's worth of pain and trauma. But we know that that's not how life works. A caterpillar might change in this way and metamorphosize into a complete new something that feels and is completely different from its old self. But as humans and as a shared culture, we bring our history with us. So all this talk of turning over a new chapter, a new leaf, a new year, I have to admit, so far, 2021 feels very similar to 2020. And this leaves me feeling in an odd mood these last few days. I feel a little defensive about what's to come. I feel suspect, I feel nervous, and I feel hopeful, and I feel excited, and I feel a curiosity, all these things all at once. We do know that, yes, a vaccine is coming and being distributed, but we also know, looking back, that so many have died in this country and across the world. And we know that this will continue. We know that struggles will affect the marginalized communities the most, those without sufficient health insurance, people of color, people in poverty, and small businesses who are struggling to just make it through. And while we know that President-elect Biden will likely take office in January, it seems we're already being promised more chaos in this coming very week. And we hope that it doesn't end with more violence. We know that repairing our democracy And the division that's happened in this nation is not something that will simply change with a presidency, but will likely take a generation. And we've seen that racial unrest doesn't just stop on January 1. It continues a deep history and a future that we hope to unfold and continue the work, but we've seen that. And we've seen in our own lives struggles that we carried over from that line in the sand from December 31st to January 1. It reminds me of a story, a difficult story, but a helpful story. We'll see. There was a woman who was particularly oppressed by her own troubles and woe. Her sleep was never that good because she was always thinking about what next might happen bad. And one night she dreamed that she was in a large gray cave. And in this cave, there were thousands of bundles, little gray sacks on the floor. Some were big and some were small, some were tight and some were loose. Some had corners poking out against the fabric, some were smooth and some were lumpy. In her dream, she was approached by a figure whom she associated with God. "What are these sacks and bundles?" she asked. "These are bundles of troubles and woe. Everyone carries such a bundle over their right shoulder." And the woman looked, and sure enough, she was toting a great gray sack over her right shoulder. "Well, that explains an awful lot about my troubles and woes," said the woman. And the figure said, if you want, you can put your sack down and choose a different one." The woman couldn't believe it. What an opportunity to lay down her own troubles and woe and find something that might be easier, might be better for her to take. And so she didn't hesitate. Anything would be better than the burdens that she currently carried now. So she put her bundle down and began picking up and trying on different ones, and she was very careful because it seemed like a good choice would go a long way for her. And she found a light one that might poke her in the back or dig into her shoulder. And the heavy ones might lay smoother upon her, but they caused her to lean and tilt in awkward ways. They were they were new, and she wasn't used to these new bags. And so she was picking them up and putting them down, and she finally found one that seemed to work for her, that seemed to fit, not too heavy, not too awkwardly shaped, not too uncomfortable. And she said, "This one, I'll take this one." "Wonderful," said the figure. "Open it up and see." And when she opened it, she looked a little bemused and shook her head. And the bundle was her own bundle that she had laid down. Doesn't that just get you? Our own troubles and woes and bundles are our own. Is it not fair to think that we might be able to swap them out or trade or turn them in? Is there no hope of easing our load, of being happier or lighter of spirit? Are we stuck with these bundles over our right shoulders? But we know that trouble and woe are a part of life. In our history, what has made that bag of troubles and woe also make us who we are. We can't escape from ourselves. It's one of those wherever you go, there you are things. We're exposed to the hardships of life, some of which of our own creation and doing, and some simply befall us. But they are ours, and we've got the scars to prove it. Sometimes we set ourselves up for sadness, and other times we're just minding our own business. But such is life. So maybe it's not about getting rid of the bundles or laying them down or walking off. Maybe there's something in accepting the troubles and woes that we have, understanding them, accepting them to some degree, naming them is difficult. We don't have to like them. And maybe it's also sharing them, whether they're our own personal burdens or burdens that we carry for being a part of this world, but sharing them in a way that's not shameful, but it affirms that troubles and woe are a part of life. And so 2020 was a year like that. And so let's do that right now. If Leora would open the chat, we'll just create a space to share from 2020, from this past year, a trouble or a woe that you're carrying, that comes with you into the new year, that you didn't quite get to take off your right shoulder and toss on the ground when the year flipped and changed. Injustice continues on, for sure. Family legal matters, grief, disease, accepting paths, political instability, elder parents and medical issues. The fact that we miss being with people, miss our grandchildren. Health issues continue. And our family that struggle with mental illness. And people who still miss choir, and the grief of the death of the wife. This increasingly divided nation. Struggles as a small business owner, isolation, and new health issues. The loss of loved ones, less exercise, worry that I won't be able to see my friends the same way, knowing that our divided nation causes that. Isolation, still distance teaching, and for kids, still distance learning. All of these and more we hold and we witness and we take into the new year. We know that our lives and our character, though, are forged in these difficult times, through these painful experiences. Again, it's not that we have to like them, but they are our histories, and they make us who we are. As we look backwards, we realize that it's the choices that we make in those difficult days that shape us. And they come from the core of our being, and they help create our character and our values and how it is we move in the world. The meaning of our life is found in these choices, in these moments of the eternal now that continue on. It's how we choose to live and to walk and to have our being. But in that story from earlier, that wasn't the end. We left this dreaming woman holding on to her familiar bundle of troubles and woes. But the story continues. She turns to this figure and smiles when she realized that what she reclaimed was her own. And then she entered into another room in the cave, and it was filled with golden bundles and sacks. These, said the figure, are sacks of blessing. Everyone carries a golden sack of blessings on their left shoulder. The woman looked, and sure enough, there was a bright golden bundle that hung off of her left shoulder. If you wish, said the figure, you're welcome to exchange your sack for any one of these. No, thank you, said the woman. I'll keep the blessings I already enjoy. When she awoke from her dream, the sun was shining through the window, and she strangely felt better and lighter than before. As we enter into this new year, I'm conscious of how much I want to hold on to and preserve into the future. I don't want to forget the events and milestones that happened in 2020. There were many wonderful things as well. Those so-called silver linings from the pandemic, or from our time together. There are things about this past year that I cherish. And if I just throw out the entire year to get rid of the pain and the trauma, or at least pretend and try to, I fear that I might get rid of some of the good as well. It was a year unlike any other. We know that for sure. But as we became teachers to our children at home, I got this amazing experience of hearing my kids talk in their classrooms, of asking questions. And I got to sit and learn with them and learn math again with them. I got closer to our neighbors. We got a hamster. I got to be here in Bend and soothe my soul with walks out in nature. And here at this fellowship, our congregational life has continued in new and fascinating and interesting and curious ways, but thriving nonetheless. I've been amazed at the resilience of this congregation, that we've adjusted to these Zoom worship services and the many wonderful services that the worship team helped us create, and all the stuff that keeps happening that's carried over from what we used to consider congregational life and how it's adapted. And the new things that have happened, the new groups, the new connections, the work for racial justice that this community has deepened in this past year. And then there's the creativity of humans at large when I look around at all the interesting ways that we've responded to this pandemic. I remembered when the TV commercials changed and were addressing the pandemic directly. And I thought, wow, we're changing everything, aren't we? Even how we receive advertisements. I think we all have some stories like this from 2020. Stories that don't make the pain and the trauma of the year worth it necessarily, but they're worth remembering and honoring in their own right. We would know better than to think that a new year will simply fix everything that's wrong in the world and in our own lives. And so we have work ahead. Whatever that work might be, we're up for it. And so let's open the chat again and just lift up some of those golden sacks of blessings over our left shoulder that happened in this past year of 2020. Time. Loss of B&B clients meant more time to play outdoors. And health, honoring your health. A more healthy lifestyle, simplicity. More new connections, even through Zoom, new connections virtually. Personal growth, improvement in health. Being outside and watching comets. Increased work and financial health. The election of a new government, family. Illusions shattered. Conversations with family, building projects that happened, more cat snuggling time, more unity in the family, resilience being developed, more connections to friends and family, continuing Spanish, more time for nature, Central Oregon beauty for sure, sunrise and sunsets and being aware of them. All of these blessings and more, understanding the importance of saying, I love you. So we honor all the good that happened in 2020. And while we consider that we carry a lot of what was difficult from 2020 as well, and we know that a new year won't fix it, and yet there is something in that New Year's flip. There's something about it that offers us hope, some sense of freshness. Our theme for December was stillness, which was nice, but our theme for January is imagination, which is incredibly appropriate for January. It points towards that which is not yet real in the world, but might be. Amy talked about the difference between wishes and goals. And so we think about that as the past and the future meet in this eternal now. As we find ourselves in this middle, waiting in between these 2 years. Angela Agantala writes, you can think either that the world is getting better or think that the future will be much better than it is now, or you can think that the world is getting worse. But that continuum isn't as important to me. Actually, as this idea of, do you think you have agency in this world that is either getting better or worse? When it comes to our futures, we have hope and we have fear. But sometimes we forget that we also have influence. And that means we can choose the futures we want to work towards, and that nothing is written in stone. There's something about the new year that reminds us of our agency, that as people we make choices, and that we can affect change in our own lives and in the world around us. This supple and fertile time in January is a time where we turn to our imaginations and we dream about what might be. And then we wonder and begin to work toward that vision. And so let's open the chat one more time and write what it is in our imaginations that we are hoping for, that it's possible in this new world that is not yet here perhaps, but that we are reminded of in this New Year's in between. A new career, unity, being kind always, justice and more unity, peace, eternal and external. And the question is, what are we imagining for the possibility of the future? What are our hopes? And so loneliness and weakness, waiting for good health to return, and maybe less fear, more compassion, and less politics, a concerted effort around Black Lives Matter, and hope about regenerating, and economics, and the common ground can be found in singing together again, and publishing a book 20 years in the making, and human evolution towards inclusion and kindness, deep understanding, a coming together with those we disagree, a middle way, clean air and water and soil and gardening, movement towards solutions for global warming, taking risks, maybe being on the other side of the pandemic and being together, a new home, leading with kindness, realization that change is needed, deeper community, trust, openness, love, gratitude, and respect. All of these and more are what are on our hearts for our own lives and for the world around us. We imagine these things, and we remember that nothing is written in stone, and then we can choose the futures that we want to work toward. And in choosing those futures of hope and love and compassion and that wonderful list that we just read, that is work that is always worthy toward leaning into. We know that amidst the brutalities of life, our scars are witness to the persistent, counter-demanding mysteries of healing, reknitting, rejoining, recovering, as miraculous as any birth, writes Clark Dewey Wells. He continues that we cannot enter into the new year smooth as babes, but we do enter as survivors, often enriched, tougher, wiser, and seasoned by life's struggles, readier for the time to come. Our scars signal more than lamentation, not injury, but renewal, not grief, but reconciliation, not ruin, but restoration, not the old year's accumulation of woe, but the new year's reality of healing and strength and hope. And so for this new year, I want to hold fast to those people I love and to the purposes to which I am committed, to my values, to my hopes and possibility for that better world and being a part of it. All this gives my life direction and joy. And I don't want to forget the tragedies necessarily, but perhaps have my pain eased by sharing them, accepting them, understanding that they are a reality. These things keep me grounded and keep me being formed. A colleague and friend, Sarah Lawal, writes of New Year's and resolutions. She said, because resolutions feel too constricting and far too fragile, let's make promises of imagination, making manifest the little dreams buried this year and bigger hopes crushed by 1,000 little cuts by the sweeping tidal waves of 2020. And also promises to hold on to the lessons lingering in the muck and beauty of it all. Promise to get outside every day, to drink in the cool water and look up at the sky, to hug trees and smell flowers and bring more green inside. And promise to water those plants too. Promise to stay slow, to sit and stare, to take more naps, to say no and yes more often. Promise to love more freely, to keep cooking and making bread, knitting, painting, writing, creative crafts, or just creative thoughts. Promise to say thank you for the little things and big things every day. Promise not to get too comfortable or too righteous, to let in enough pain to stay fired up, committed to the dream of belovedness, the dream of the emerging world, where our liberation is bound up with everyone and everything, always beckoning us to see more clearly and to love more deeply. Promise to let the fires burn away the old, crusty obstacles and excuses and make space for new dreams, for all that imagination can conjure. Promise to notice the light and let it shine, to fan the flames of hope and cleanse the spirit, and to let life begin again, renewed, gentle, following the sparks into the unknown. We make promises to ourselves and to each other. May it be so this day and every day, this year and every year. Part of what's been difficult in 2020 is the loss of life. Lots of people have died in this past year, some beloved family members, and some others, people who were larger in life, perhaps people of culture or celebrities or musicians. One of these people who died in this past year was John Prine, and he was an important person to me and many people I care about. He died on April 7th, and I remember it was the first COVID-related death that had an impact on me, that made me realize that this was a very real thing. That service just after, I recall Peggy and Fred sang the John Prine song, Angel from Montgomery. Well, the last song that John Prine ever recorded was titled, I Remember Everything. John Prine was looking back at his own life. He was looking at understanding that life is full of memories. Life is full of experiences. And most oftentimes we can remember a lot of it. He also invites us to understand that it can be better to focus on remembering some of the sweeter and kinder, more gentle moments as well. And so let's begin this new year by listening to John Prine in his last recording sing to us about his life and reflection. I remember everything.
All right. I've been down this road before. I remember every tree, every single blade of grass holds a special place for me. And I remember every town and every hotel room and every song I ever sang on a guitar out of tune. I remember everything, things I can't forget. the way you turned and smiled on me on the night that we first met. And I remember every night your ocean eyes of blue, how I miss you in the morning light, like roses miss the dew. I've been down this road before, alone as I can be, careful not to let my past go sneaking up on me. Got no future in my happiness, the regrets are very few. Sometimes a little tenderness was the best that I could do. I remember everything, things I can't forget. Ocean eyes of blue, how I miss you in the morning light, like roses miss the dew. How I miss you in the morning light, like roses miss the dew.
Scott, you're on.
Mine? I thought Peggy was on. All right. So if you have lit a chalice at home, we invite you to extinguish that at this time as we say the covenant of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship together. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
You have a benediction for us?
I do. Let's have one. I've also got an invitation for you. It's an invitation into coffee hour, albeit virtually. So we just break up into groups of about 5 or 6, and we have about 12 minutes together to explore a question. And so we're going to ask today, what was one of those good things that happened to you in 2020 as a guiding question to shape that space? And we'll go to that space after Peggy plays just a little bit more of Imagine after our benediction. But before our benediction, I'll also invite you into an opportunity to share resources to support the work of this church. A slide will come up and you can do that by texting to give, or you can go to our church website to do that as well. And now for the long-awaited benediction. So John Prine wrote story songs, oftentimes with characters. Oftentimes they were marginalized characters, but they were little windows into humanity. And we know that, in truth, all of us are characters. We're living this life. And so as we live our lives, and as we collect troubles and woes, and as we collect blessings, and as those bags over our shoulders take on different shapes, as their contents shift and change and are added to and released, perhaps we'll take just that piece of advice from John Prine and say just a little tenderness sometimes is enough. Sometimes if that's the best you can do, then that is enough. Go into this day full of love of this community and know that you are a part of creating that love as well. Go in peace.
Thank you.